Hello everybody and welcome back to Plato-Senpai. Today and for the next couple days I have a special treat for you because it was a special treat for me. I got to collaborate on a 3-part video about One Punch Man with NewYorkMikes2 here on YouTube. It's going to be a more informal discussion, so it's a little bit of a change of pace from what I normally put on the channel, but I hope you enjoy watching us have a fun conversation with lots of laughs and to delve a little bit, although informally, into some of the philosophy behind One Punch Man. So, without further ado, take it away, NewYorkMikes2.
Alright, so today we're going to be talking about One Punch Man Season 1 and Season 2. There'll be no spoilers as far as the manga goes for Season 3 pass, so if you've caught up with the anime, then you should be good and there'll be no spoilers. So, what did you think overall about the anime?
Well, One Punch Man was a hilarious parody of the sort of superhero niche of shonen anime, and I thought it was a great spin on the whole subgenre, but particularly of interest is Saitama's dissatisfaction, his sort of existential ennui, which is really just a fancy way of saying supreme boredom to the core. Saitama is just too powerful, and that's sort of the premise of the show. He is the overpowered hero who can solve everything with one punch. So he can't really get any satisfaction out of any battle because there is no battle as far as he is concerned. Everything is ended with simply one punch. This means he's sort of on top of the world, and it's not always easy being on top of the world. One relevant example from history comes to mind, and that is Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great had conquered all of the known world, well, up into India, but that's of course a very historical scholarly matter to be discussed elsewhere. But he conquered all of the historically known world at the time, and after that there was nothing left to do. He was born to conquer, he was born to rule, and once he had achieved that up into his late 20s, early 30s, there was nothing left to do. And some say that he died of despair in his early 30s. Some say he died of boredom. Some say he died of a simple fever because there was like nothing left in him to resist death. Some say he even became an alcoholic and drank himself to death just out of sheer boredom. And that's a terrible tragedy, terrible fate to meet. But Saitama isn't quite there yet. But the thing with Saitama is that it appears that nothing higher really appeals to him. In Season 2, when King makes the appeal, and he says, you know, Saitama, you can't just be a hero because you're bored. You can't be a hero because you think it's fun. You can't do this just for your own personal satisfaction. You have to have some kind of ideal to fulfill. In that respect, you still have room to grow. And then King admits that he actually just read that in a manga and he's not really that profound, which I thought was a great way to... That was just phenomenal. And Saitama seems to say, oh, you know, he's right. He's actually making sense. And then he's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And just sort of drops it, and then they go play video games. That's...
Yeah, and that's...
But that... Go on.
That's just exactly what is funny to me. It's just like, I think, though... Like, what is his drive that's keeping him going? Because he says he's a hero for fun, but is that really it? Because I know he doesn't care about rankings at all, which we find out with a lot of other ones they care so much about. Like the Blizzard group, who's B group, they want to conquer the world of heroes and make it all the way to the top. You know, then there's even A-class who are in their feelings, as we saw against Garu, who they all want to think they're better than S. So what is it that that's keeping this drive to actually still want to be a hero, and what's keeping him doing what he's doing?
I think for Saitama, I think it's the hope. There is this strange hope that maybe one day he will meet a worthy opponent, and it keeps him going. That being said, every monster he seems to face, he knows just from looking at them that they're not going to be a challenge at all. I mean, the really little monsters, or the ones that are only twice his size, you know, there are ones that are 10 times his size, and he still knows. I mean, by the end of Season 2, He simply has to one punch the giant centipede, like the the elder centipede. And it's like after everything that Silverfang had thrown at him, after everything that Genos had thrown at him, or Demon Cyborg, if you will, depends on how you want to call him. After everything they'd thrown at him, it still only took Saitama's one punch, and it leaves you wondering, who is this guy? As like you said, we're not going to delve into the manga, which is good because I haven't read it myself. I'm only familiar with the anime, but I don't get any indication as to what's really truly so special about Saitama. How he got that way. It seems like he's accidentally stumbled upon the cheat code of the universe and he doesn't know what he's doing now. Mm-hmm. But you asked, what keeps Saitama going? And I think it is the hope that one day he'll find a worthy opponent. And the battle that takes place at the very end of season 1 definitely could have given him a little bit of hope, or given him a reason to keep that hope alive. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean he's not languishing in the meantime. As he confesses to King, his emotions are waning. He's becoming less and less emotional. But you do see little breakthroughs at times where he begins to wonder, wait, am I doing this for the wrong reason? I need to show up and do something to save somebody. Especially with Suiru, man, I can't pronounce his name. The one really good martial artist who ended up winning the tournament.
Oh, because, Suryu?
Yeah, Suryu. Suryu. When Saitama shows up just in the nick of time because Suiru was called out for help. Yeah. Which was that was kind of an excellent mini story arc, was the humbling of Suiru.
Oh, that was a great arc. I love it.
All he needed to do was cry out for a hero and say, I can't do this alone. And that's when Saitama shows up and says, you did well. And then he kind of reveals a sense of compassion and justice.
That was a very humbling arc for the man, too.
Excellently humbling, beautiful. But what's funny is how it kind of dries up after a little bit, and then he goes back to being normal old Saitama.
Yeah. Like, even though it's amazing because no one understands the unlimited amount of power he has. Even Suryu, he doesn't think that he can beat that big monster. He's even scared for him, so he doesn't know that. And Genos, who's always with him 24/7, he doesn't even know the full extent of Saitama's powers. He even thinks after, he gets always the same repeating thing, he gets demolished by Monster. He thinks that Monster might even stand a chance against Saitama, and go figure, he one punches him so hard that his head goes flying to Suryu. No one understands completely just how much power he has. I think the only one who can understand it was the doctor from season 1 when he tells him how he got his unlimited amount of strength. He's the only one that seems to kind of understand, like, this man just has a limited amount of power at his disposal.
Correct. And the thing about having an unlimited amount of power, we can sort of see Saitama as a case study of what that could do to a person. That being on top of the world is not easy, because what purpose in life do you have left to fulfill? It's almost like human beings need some sense of struggle. We need something against which to fight, or something towards which to strive. But once you are already on top of the world and you have that amount of power, I'm going to borrow a phrase for a moment. It's not really a phrase, it's just the title of a book. Once you have that amount of power, it truly seems that you are beyond good and evil. You've become that sort of Nietzschean Ubermensch, the Superman of the future, where morals, you're above morals. That being said, Saitama isn't an unjust person. He's not necessarily a villainous person. But if he ever chose to be, because that was what was fun, no one would be able to stop him. That's the truly scary thing about him, is that he's an overpowered hero who does it for fun, but that's such a fragile endeavor. Should he ever think, being a villain is more fun, just like Garo does, well, the whole universe would be in danger.
Yeah. Well, I kind of, I want to tie this 1 second to Attack on Titan. There's this guy, Kenny Ackerman, in the end, when he's about to die, he tells his son, well, I guess, they have some ties, but he tells him that everyone's drunk on something. and that he was kind of living his life to find that purpose. He wanted kind of this whole power to just control the world, and everyone's just drunk on something. Everyone just has something they're so tunnel driven to. And I guess, yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. And I mean, even with life, I mean, you know, you have all these goals first year in high school, and you're like, what do I want to do next in my life? Maybe I want to go to college, maybe I want to immediately get a job. But then you think even down the line, like, I want to buy a house, I want to have kids. Like, you're constantly going to this goal that you envision, and, you know, it's a great ride, and once you get there, it's so satisfying. But let's just say you get a handout immediately you're there, then it's like, yeah, it's fun for, you know, maybe the first few days. Like, you win the lottery, you know, you could buy a Lamborghini and all this, but then, you know, then what, you know? I feel, yeah, in life, you just always constantly need a goal and just keep, you know, progressing in life.
Precisely, right. I've heard it said before that if you're not growing, you're dying. Mm-hmm. And that's you know, so it's almost as if there is no neutrality in life, in the course of one's life. You're either, you know, or to put it in quote, in terms of a famous movie quote, you either get busy living or you get busy dying, right? Well, yeah. The problem is that Saitama is just, if you look at it from that perspective, then Saitama is essentially immortal. He's mm-hmm. not going to die because he has demonstrated infinite life mm-hmm. in a way. But as far as everybody being drunk on something, the trade-off is that by having some kind of limit, by having limits, you have life. That limits are not just constraints on one's freedom or power, but limits channel you. They channel you in a given direction. Think of it like the banks of a river. You know, the banks prevent the river from going one direction or another, but enable it to go in one specific direction, enable it to flow. If a river had no banks, it would turn into a swamp. The water would just spread out, go everywhere, and if it's lucky, it'll become a swamp. But that means the water is stagnant, it's not moving anywhere, and it becomes fetid, disgusting, just a pool for mosquitoes. Or, if a river no longer had banks and the water went everywhere, over time it would just dry up and disappear, and there would be no river left. So, my point is that human beings need limits in order to have directions. That's the trade-off. It's a sense mm-hmm. of sacrifice that because I can't go here or here, it makes it all the more evident that I have a one-way focus in this direction, and I can concentrate my very being on something. The problem with Saitama is that he did do that. We can't assume he was always like this. After all, the series demonstrates he was not always One Punch Man or I'm sorry, Caped Baldy. But he trained for 3 years as hard as he could. And then all of a sudden he just ends up being the strongest being alive, ostensibly in the entire universe. So there is one limit that is no longer there, but because one of the biggest limits to his human being is removed, that also severely jeopardizes his sense of direction.
Yeah, and let me, so you were talking about Alexander the Great, which is interesting. I had a history class on that in college, but, so we're kind of tying this in like an RPG. Let's say, example, like Pokemon. Everyone has played Pokemon before. The game's fun when you're first starting out because, you know, you're level 5, you're facing a bunch of other level 5s, you're constantly getting new moves, you're constantly evolving, like every other minute you're evolving, even the Pokemon itself is evolving, levels, all that stuff. So you're constantly progressing. But let's say, for example, you're starting off the game at level 100. It's not fun because you're one-shotting everything, and nothing matters because you already have all the moves in your arsenal, you're already fully evolved. And then even towards the end of the game, once you get to level 100, everything just becomes so easy and there's no point. Like, what's the point of getting experience or getting money or getting new moves? Because you know in the end, you're going to win. So what's the point of playing? And I guess that's what everyone finds in RPGs. Once you hit a certain level, there's no point of playing because after beating all these enemies, it's not as rewarding because you're at the max.
Precisely. But oftentimes, as to quote, you know, one of the greatest philosophical minds ever, Linkin Park. I believe it was the remix for In the End on mm-hmm. their album, Reanimated. But from the start to the end, no matter what I pretend, the journey is more important than the end or the start. And so it's more about the journey, but the problem is that journeys are limited, and it's one can oftentimes wonder, like, well, if it's the journey that matters more than the end or the start, then why end the journey? Why ever say that you have become something, and why not get lost in perpetual becoming? Well, at that point, you lose your end goal, and if you lose your end goal, then why continue becoming? Why continue journeying? You know, as a strange confession here, I never actually played the Pokemon video games as a kid.
Oh, wow.
I actually only have played Pokemon Go in the last few years, strangely enough. So when
Well,
you talk
there's the
about,
same concept there, I guess, kind of.
of course, I understand, but Pokemon Go is way more dynamic, and it's really much harder to level up, and new things are being added constantly. But when you say RPG, I actually think of MMORPGs. So I think of the good old classic RuneScape.
Well, yeah, there too. Yeah.
Once again, very difficult to level up, and new stuff always being added, new players always jumping into the mix, so things are kept dynamic. But you still will get notifications whenever somebody would reach level 99 of some skill, and it's like, okay, how much longer is that player going to stick around? They've mastered their craft. How much longer do they need to stick around?
At first, he probably enjoys it the first week, just bullying level, five people and just seeing the reactions of them just crying after getting demolished.
I hope you are enjoying this discussion I am having with NewYorkMikes2, because part 2 will be coming up tomorrow. So stick around, and as always, this is Plato-Senpai. And don't forget to check in the description for the link to NewYorkMikes2's channel if you want all sorts of content about My Hero Academia, Attack on Titan, and some of those great shows that are coming out right now or are just finishing or have come out in the last few years. Go give him some love. So, as always, this is Plato-Senpai, and I will see you next time. Stick around.